just to orient you to your table, you will, just like Desiree mentioned, you have the prescription pad, that's for your prayer requests, so definitely jot those down. You also should have some sheets if you want to fill in the blanks. Some people like to do that to follow along, so you can do that during the study time tonight. And then there are also maybe 1 or 2 verses on each table. So the first person that picks that up will be the person that reads that. All right, go ahead, pick it up. So that way you can participate in the Bible study as well. So if you pick up I almost had a prescription. If you pick up a verse, then I might be calling on you to read that out loud as we go along. So tonight, spoiler alert, we're not talking about forgiveness. If you've read ahead. So there's obviously issues that we have to deal with before we hit the forgiveness part. But just to level set, so I am not up here because I'm an expert. I do not have it all figured out. So we're really on this journey together to learn together. I was talking to a coworker of mine yesterday, had a difficult situation at work over the past few weeks that I thought was going to be resolved yesterday, but wasn't. And I turned to her and I was like, I'm supposed to teach a Bible study on anger tomorrow. And she's like, well, at least you have a lot of material to work with. So we will dive in. So I don't know if you've ever seen this movie or know this little guy, but this is an animated movie. It's called Inside Out, and it's really a movie about tween girl emotions. If anyone has a tween girl or has been around a tween girl, or you all were one at one point in your life, you understand that a lot of those girls come with a lot of emotions. Well, this is the anger emotion, and he does his job really well. Plays his character well. He is short-tempered, he is explosive, and if you see the little guy hovering in the corner, that's fear. And so he definitely invokes a lot of fear. And so tonight we're actually going to be talking about anger and the hidden emotions that surface as anger. The first verse that we're going to be focused on tonight is Proverbs 18:19. And that verse says, a brother offended is harder to be won than a strong city, and their contentions are like the bars of a castle. And so if you think about that, I was thinking about this verse of how incredible that was to think about how a person's anger can be compared to bars of a castle. And I know we don't really have castles in our day, but we definitely have bars. And so if I was thinking about, if I approach a building or a house or something that has bars on the window, I automatically think, maybe I should not be here, or this is dangerous. It definitely invokes fear, but it definitely is made to keep people out, right? So whether that's dangerous people or just people in general. And so also the part of the verse is the offended person. So when we are offended, this verse says it's easier to win a war than to win us over. So just think about how powerful it is to have anger in your heart. And if you're offended, it's going to take a lot to win you over sometimes. It's also important to remember that an unforgiving spirit does not spring up overnight. Usually you don't wake up thinking, I'm just not going to forgive that person, right? So, but it's usually something that starts with emotions. So emotions of rejection, hurt, disappointment, betrayal. All those things can eventually lead to anger, create anger to surface. And if anger is not dealt with properly and quickly, that will turn to bitterness, and then that is what leads to an unforgiving spirit. So those are the things that we're going to be talking about. How do these emotions that eventually surface as anger turn into bitterness and then an unforgiving spirit? Does anyone enjoy weeding? Notice I didn't say gardening. Does anyone enjoy weeding? I don't think anyone's going to raise their hand on that one. I don't. I do love to, you do. Well, you can come to my house. I don't enjoy weeding, but I do love gardening. I love, mostly because no one else in my family likes gardening, so I can be out there by myself and it's quiet. But I love beautiful flowers and vegetables and things like that. But if I'm not careful and and don't tackle the weeds that are in my garden, they will overgrow. And it takes a lot of effort to remove them if you let them go. And so that's kind of how I think of bitter roots. So if you don't tackle the weeds or the bitter roots in your life right away, it's going to be hard to get them out. And it'll kind of kill just like it kills the joy of gardening, it'll kill the joy of your Christian walk. So it's important for us to deal with the weeds or the bitter roots in our life. So it's also important for us to remember that anger is a warning signal. So if we see anger popping up in our life, we should automatically think, wow, what triggered that, and how do I need to deal with it appropriately? Most of the time, anger is not going to be constructive. Sometimes it can be. There's times in the Bible that people had righteous anger and that was fine. But most of the time, it's going to be destructive, especially if it's not put into check. And like we said earlier, it's generally going to start with an emotional feeling. Ignoring signs like this on the road, or when warning signs come up in our car, if we ignore them, obviously it will eventually lead to a consequence. And that's just like when we ignore anger in our heart. So it eventually will have consequences if we don't deal with it effectively. All right, I'm channeling my inner Mackenzie when I come to this. So her favorite Webster's 1864 dictionary. If you look up the definition of anger, especially in the 1864 dictionary, it is paragraphs long. It is, when I looked at it, it was quite impressive. So I'm going to read to you what the dictionary says about anger. It said, anger is a violent passion of the mind, excited by a real or supposed injury, usually accompanied with a propensity to take vengeance or obtain satisfaction from the offending party. This passion, however, varies in degrees of violence, and ingenuous minds may be attended only with the desire to reprove or chide the offended. Anger is also excited by an injury offered to a relation, friend, or party to which one is attached. And some degrees of it may be excited by cruelty, injustice, or oppression offered to those with whom one has no immediate connection, or even to the community of which one is a member. Nor it is unusual to see something of this passion roused by great absurdities in others, especially in controversy or discussion. Anger may be inflamed till it rises to rage or a temporary delirium. So obviously Webster had a lot to say about anger, but there's a lot of different ways that anger can manifest, and a lot of reasons that it can manifest in our life, or that we can become angry at someone else. Most of the times when we are frustrated on the inside, anger will often surface on the outside. So let's look a little bit at what some Bible verses that talk about anger. Who has Proverbs 15:1? All right, go ahead, Riley.
A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger.
This is a great reminder about how our tongues can control our emotions and also the emotions of others, right? So a soft anger turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. All right, who has the big one? Romans, thank you, Heather. Romans 12:17-21.
I'm not going to be angry at my table who did not pick this paper. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing thou shalt heap coals of fire upon his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good.
That's hard. That's a really hard verse to live out. So some of the truths in the verses that we're reading tonight will not come naturally to us. They are hard. They're really hard to live out, but they can be accomplished with the strength of the Lord. Let's do a few more. So who has Proverbs 29:22?
An angry man
How about Proverbs 13:10?
Only by pride cometh contention, but with the well advised is wisdom.
And then Proverbs 16:18.
Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before fall.
Great. So we can tell even in these verses that not only can anger and fury cause destruction, but also having a prideful and haughty spirit can lead us to the same types of destruction. So what can we do when we notice anger in our heart? In Psalm 139, David acknowledges to the Lord that the Lord knows our every thought and admits that he has had hatred in his heart. And he asks the Lord to help him when he said, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me into the way everlasting." So I think that's a really good example of when we notice anger in our hearts, is to ask the Lord to search us. He will be honest with us, and he will point out the areas in our life that we need to correct. So another example of anger in the Bible comes from Numbers. So Numbers 27-12. I'll read this one. I won't ask you to do it. But in the Bible, this is when Moses loses his temper and disobeyed God. And it says, "And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Take the rod and gather thou the assembly together, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak ye unto the rock before their eyes, and it shall give forth his water, and thou shalt bring forth unto them water out of the rock. So thou shalt give the congregation and their beasts drink." And Moses took the rod from before the Lord, as he commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock. And he said unto them, "Hear now, ye rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock?" And Moses lifted up his hand, and with the rod he smote the rock twice. And the water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their beast also. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, "Because ye believed me not to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore ye shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them." So what was Moses supposed to do? What did the Lord command him to do? To speak to the rock, right? So, and then what did he end up doing? He hit it. So he smote the rock in anger. And if we look back a few chapters in Numbers, back to Numbers 14 and some of the earlier part of Numbers 20, it will tell us what led to Moses' frustration and anger. Does anyone remember why he was so frustrated with the children of Israel? Right, because they were complaining about everything. They felt like they'd been left in the wilderness to die. They weren't given anything to eat, even though they were, and they just kept complaining. So all of these frustrations led him to be angry, and then eventually led him to disobey the Lord, which had a huge consequence, not only for himself, but for all of the children of Israel. So that is the power, definitely the power of anger. So what do we do when we're feeling hurt and disappointed or frustrated and confused? Who has Jeremiah 29:11?
For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end.
And what about Job 23:10?
But he knoweth the way that I take. When he hath tried me, I shall come forth as gold.
Great. So remember, the Lord has ordered your steps. He knows what is good for you, even though it might not feel good all the time. He always knows what's good for you, and knows everything that's going to happen before it happens. He allows the good things in our life, or allows things in our life, to give us opportunity to grow our faith and make him look good and get the glory. So when you're feeling angry, it's good to ask yourself these two questions. So is the anger righteous? Most of the time it's not. It's usually selfish. So is it righteous or selfish? Is this a big deal? So does it need to be addressed? Do I see it like a weed in the garden? Do I need to go ahead and pluck it out before it becomes something that overcomes the joy of your Christian walk? And if I say it out loud, will it be worth it? So that's always a good thing. So remember, your tongue has power. If it's not worth the result, do not say it out loud. Just keep it to yourself. All right, so we're going to move into the second chapter of the book. Now that we've talked about anger and how it starts, we're going to talk a little bit about how people express their anger. So obviously, so this picture, people are either screaming or singing, but I think they're actually angry. They look angry. So are you a shouter or a powder? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. So how would you describe a shouter? Obviously, those are people that are really loud and yelling and express their emotions outwardly, right? And you can be an in-control shouter or an out-of-control shouter. So an out-of-control shouter is pretty obvious. It's someone who just cannot control their anger, yells and shouts and that type of thing. But an in-control shouter often uses manipulation to demean other people, and so still expresses anger outwardly, but might do it in a more quiet way. I feel like women are a little better at that than men are, but I feel like any of us can fall into those categories. So despite popular opinion, people are actually capable of controlling their anger. Have you ever seen a shouter turn off his or her anger when someone else walks in the room?
I can tell you something right now.
Uh-oh.
I was in a car and this guy cut me off and it made me very angry. So when we came up to the red light, I wound my window down and shouted at him. And then I remembered that on the back of my car, I had a thing about Jesus and serving him at Grace Baptist Church.
Oops.
And immediately I had to ask God to forgive me. Now I couldn't hear him because he already took off, but but it will come back to bite you.
Right. So other examples, I mean, maybe a teacher that's yelling at their student and then the principal walks in, or maybe an employee that's yelling at their coworker and then their boss walks by. Or, I mean, I've definitely been guilty of this. A mother yelling at their children until their phone rings. You're like, hello, nothing's happening. We're good. So we can definitely turn it off in the right moment. So that definitely lets us know that we're in control of our anger, or can be in control of our anger. Also remember that anger is not an inherited condition, but rather a learned behavior. So you can't blame it on your mama. You didn't get it from her, even though you might have learned it from someone that you were around. But that lets us know that our anger can actually influence other people, right? So if it's a learned behavior, whether it's our own children, nieces and nephews, children in our church, the way that we behave or the way that we express our anger can be influential on other people, especially little people. So it's also important to understand that if you don't master your anger, it will definitely master you. So anger can be as destructive as a volcano. It can not only destroy you, but can destroy those that are around you. Who has Proverbs 18:21?
Proverbs 18:21, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof.
What about Proverbs 14:17?
He that is soon angry dealeth foolishly, and a man of wicked devices is hated.
Ecclesiastes 7:9. Anyone? Okay, I can read that one. Be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry, for anger resteth in the bosom of fools. And then Galatians 5:22-23. Does anyone have that one?
But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law.
All right, how about us powders? I will own how I express my anger. All right, so how would you describe a pouter? So these people are often quiet. They keep their emotions inward. A lot of times you're playing guesswork. They're the stewers and the smolderers. But even pouting can be a sin, right? It's still an expression of anger. And it can often hurt relationships. Some some pouters feel that confrontation is sinful, so they kind of are like, well, I'm doing the best, the best part of expressing my anger is keeping it inside. So in James 4:17 it says, submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. And then in Samuel 16:7, 1 Samuel 16:7, this reminds us that the Lord can see the inside and know if we have anger hidden. But the Lord said unto Samuel, look not on his countenance, nor on the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord seeth not as man seeth. For man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. So even if you're pouting and keeping your anger inside, the Lord knows that, and He can see what's on your heart, and it's still a sin. So it takes a lot of energy to keep anger hidden. All right, so really to wrap things up, anger is manageable. Ephesians 4:15 says, but speaking the truth in love may grow up unto him in all things, which is the head, even Christ. Anger comes from other hidden emotions that we need to address, and anger is manageable. And we can speak the truth in love, but it definitely takes the Lord to do that. So we have to work off of his strength and power, and definitely not our own. So before we go into small group time, let's go to the Lord in prayer, and then I'll go over some instructions for the questions that are going to be at your table. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this time that we can have together tonight. Ask that you would be with all of the ladies that are here today. Help us to be able to put these truths into practice into our lives, and help us as we deal with the emotions that can lead to anger, and how we express that outwardly or keep it inside sometimes. We ask that you would be with our small group time and question time and our prayer time as well. In Jesus' name.